Acknowledgement of country. City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Ramangeri and the Narranderi people, traditional custodians of surrounding villages where we live. We acknowledge their deep connection to country, respects to elders past, present and emerging. This respect is extended to Aboriginal and Torres. Someone like to.
City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, beliefs, cultures and backgrounds.
Recognise the brave individuals who served and serve our nation. Remember those who have lost their lives and paid.
Someone like to.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change to the people of this city and direct and prosper its deliberations to the honour.
Well, welcome to the last council meeting of the year. 2024. We do have 3 apologies. That is Councillor David Kemp, Councillor Carlos Quaremba and Councillor Stuart Burns. No items adjourned or lying on the table, so we move straight on to minutes of the previous meeting, 5.1, and the recommendation is that they be confirmed as true and correct. If someone would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, thank you, Councillor Schofield. Are there any questions about the minutes? No, I'll put that to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We move to 9.1, outstanding resolutions. The recommendation is that Council receive and note the report. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconding that, please. Much, Councillor Quinton. Does anybody have any questions about the outstanding resolutions? No. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried. 9.2, nomination for the Native Vegetation Council. Councillor Henderson, you want to speak?
I want to declare a conflict of interest and I'll leave the chamber.
You, so that's a material conflict?
It is a material conflict.
Thank you. The recommendation for us is that Council endorses Councillor Marilyn Henderson's nomination for the Local Government Association position on the Native Vegetation Council. Moving that way, Councillor Schofield, and seconding that way, Councillor Mackenzie. Does anyone have any questions about that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Just wait for Councillor Henderson to come back. Nomination's been approved. Councillor Henderson. We now move on to 9.3, which is the City of Victor Harbor Community Plan 2030 and the proposed revisions consultation. You'll see in the attachment with the plan, the revisions are in red or pink, and so we'll go up for consultation in relation to those. The recommendation I will do in block, unless anybody, Councillor Henderson.
Can I suggest 2 minor changes?
Can we get a mover and a seconder, and then we can do that? Councillor Schiller, you want to move that on block? Thank you. And do I have a seconder on block? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller, Councillor Mackenzie? No? Councillor Henderson, you suggested a couple of changes.
Yes, on page 11 of the plan, 39 of the agenda, excuse me, where the title is Climate Change and the part in red is Coastal Adaptation will be a major expense for Victor Harbor in future years. I would like to change that, expand that slightly, because I'd like to state that coastal adaptation already is, and I'd like to say, and will continue to be a major expense, because it has already cost this council quite a lot of money.
So you're to change that to coastal adaptation already is.
Already is and will continue
to be a major expense.
Yes.
Have you got that, Victoria? Thank you.
And the second change, a small addition, I've lost the page, but in the plan, we refer to the bluff and we also call it by Rosetta Head. I would like us to include the Ramangiri word for the bluff, which is Kongenwa. Not sure how it's pronounced.
Thank you.
I think it would be fitting to add that name.
Thank you. And I wonder whether or not it's worthwhile if we can be consistent in terms of referring it to either the bluff or Rosetta Head, but keeping one name if possible. There any further changes or questions in relation to the community plan going out for public consultation? No, in that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to 9.4, the budget schedule and preparations. So that recommendation is also, I can do that en bloc. The council note the parameters are set out in the report and the council endorse the budget preparation schedule. And you'll see that schedule starts on Monday, the 3rd of March and proceeds all the way through to the 27th of June. With quite a few meetings, public meetings and consultations involved in that schedule. Would somebody like to move that recommendation en bloc, please? Thank you, Councillor Mann. And seconding, Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that, Councillor Mann?
Yeah, I guess just to say we had a lot of good discussion about that in the workshop recently around what that'll entail in the revised schedule, and I think it's a good schedule, and I guess as discussed will allow us to have a lot more of the relevant information from the first day that we're considering it, which I think in the scheme of considering a budget is more helpful. So happy with it.
Yep. Thank you. Any further discussion? In that case, then I'll put those two recommendations to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Community development, we've got 10.1 is the community transport program invitation. I'm happy to do that en bloc unless anybody wants to separate those two recommendations. Happy to move en bloc. Councillor Henderson, thank you. And seconding that, please, somebody. Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? No. It's interesting to see and really good to see that Junction Australia would also be joining us to help run the scheme on Kangaroo Island in relation to the community transport, but we'll continue doing administering the program on behalf of Alexandrina and Yankalilla, and now having Junction join us. So I think that's great when we get community organisations playing key leadership roles within the community and helping local government. I'll put both of those recommendations to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 12.1. And Councillor Henderson, were you going to say something about this as well? I was forewarned.
Yes, you were forewarned. I will declare a conflict of interest as I'm the presiding member of the Native Vegetation Council, but there is no financial implication. So I will stay in the chamber, but I'll not speak and I'll not vote, because otherwise I'd be voting to send something to myself, which is nonsense.
Thank you. So that's a general conflict of interest you're doing. That's fine. This item 12.1 is the response to the Native Vegetation Council consultation that Oceane have in Hindmarsh Valley. And I know that there's been significant discussion in the community on social media and amongst a number of community groups about this. So I'm really pleased to see that it has been brought to the council for the council to actually have a position on it, because until council has an actual position, I'm unable to say anything in relation to this matter, and I would significantly like to be able to say something in relation to this matter, because I think that the concerns that are raised in the report really highlight that removal of such precious vegetation goes against our community plan in terms of our protection of the environment, our biodiversity and natural assets management plan, and our environmental management plan. And so the council, I think, has a role to play in addressing some of these issues. So the recommendation is that council endorses the City of Victor Harbor submission to the Native Vegetation Council consultation for Oceane residential stage 1D at Hindmarsh Valley, and that's provided under a separate cover, which you have all read. Can I have someone to move that way, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Quinton, and seconding that, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Schiller. Does anybody have questions in relation to this? Councillor Schiller?
I went out there today and had a look, and when I read the report until you actually, well, had a look is a very subjective word, but having a look at the area that is encompasses these trees is a very significant biodiversity area close to the river there, and so it's logical that we try and see these trees retained.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Does anybody else want to speak? Councillor Schofield?
Yes, look, I went out to have a look. I was trying to determine where the boundary of the old farm was in relation to the trees that are being, you know, asked to be removed. And I couldn't quite find that, but I must admit that I wasn't quite game enough to walk because of snakes, actually. But look, I agree, but also be aware that property owners do have the right to clear so many metres from their boundary fence on both sides. So just letting, you know, just stating that that is something that is allowable. So keep that in mind when the report comes back from Native Vegetation. But look, I agree with you, but I struggled to see where their fence line was.
Thank you. Any further discussion? In that case, sorry, Councillor Mann.
Yeah, no, I guess, yeah, definitely with the community sentiment and around this one, and the fact that council has done a lot of engagement in relation to its biodiversity management plans and environmental plans more broadly recently. And I know, as expressed in the report, for council to stick with its policies and plans, even though noting the chamber in the past hasn't done so when it comes to naming of streets. But I think, you know, with that native vegetation, there is that importance there, and however it's assessed by Native Veg will ultimately be the decision that lies with state government.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Quinton.
Add in to say thanks to the council and the Native Vegetation Council for preparing this report so promptly. And yeah, I definitely will be voting in favour of submitting this report and making sure that the developers are aware that the community at large is against removing these significant trees from along the river. There's no need, in my opinion. I'm very familiar with the area, so I used to live around there. It's a beautiful spot. There's no need to remove these significant trees. Just, yeah, it makes no sense. It's just, I think, basically just being greedy, and we really need to make a strong statement from council opposing it.
Thank you. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much, unanimously. And I'd just like to say now that that council has endorsed that, yes, I'm appalled that they want to remove some of these significant trees from along that river corridor. It seems to me by looking at the reports that it will fit in 1 or 2 more houses in their development plan, but it certainly encroaches on the biodiversity of that river system and the flora and fauna that are there. And we have a number of groups that have gone out to protect that area, have planted trees along that corridor, and the community, I think, are quite rightly outraged that some of the more significant trees will be removed. And there are also questions from the community as to why some of the significant trees within the block that's already been dug up have been removed. And I would be interested to know whether or not they got approval for the removal from the Native Vegetation Council, because there are quite a number of trees which I'm very surprised that they, if they were allowed to actually take them out. But let's move on. We now move on to the public minutes of the CEO Performance Review Committee of the 20th of November, and the recommendation is to receive and note those minutes. If somebody would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Mann. And seconding, please. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Any questions about the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Minutes from the Southern Community Transport Advisory Committee of the 9th of December. Recommendation is to receive and note them. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. Seconding that, please, Councillor Schiller. Any questions about those minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Uh, 14.1. Victor Harbour Horse Tram reappointment of board member, and the recommendation is to reappoint Natasha Hunt for a 3rd term. So this will be her last term on the horse-drawn tram board. If someone can move that way. Thank you very much, Councillor Schiller, and seconding Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that or have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? No. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. (14.2) the Fleurieu Waste Authority's performance report and first budget review. I'll take that budget review as read, and the recommendation is that Council endorse the financial performance report and first budget report. View. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you have any questions or comments? Does anybody have any comments? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Sticking with the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority theme, we're looking at their charter review for 2025, and the recommendation is that Council endorse the Chief Executive Officer to provide a response to the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority with no proposed amendments to their charter. Would somebody like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconding Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Mann.
Yeah, I guess just to say that it's good that after the significant reviews that were done the previous time, it's good that we got them right, and in terms of nothing further needing to be changed this time around. So that's, I guess, yeah, good result. Thank you.
Just a question that I have, Victoria, you might know, the charter's got to be reviewed by both councils. All councils. Have any other of the councils made any changes?
Through the Mayor, not that I'm aware of as yet. So they're actually just collating that information now from all the councils. So a further report will come back to this council in May if there are any specific changes, because they need to be endorsed by all constituent councils. So not that I'm aware of at this stage.
Thank you. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll put that to the, sorry, Councillor Schofield.
Oops, sorry. I just wonder, when we, across the councils, when we actually vote, Does it have to be the three councils agreeing? Or the three councils not agreeing? Is it 2 and 1? So how is that vote actually done? Because it's quite interesting, because when it usually comes to us, the other two councils have already voted in favour, which to me puts pressure on us to vote. So I don't think we really should know how anybody's voted before we vote. But how is the vote cast? Is it a 3-3 or whatever?
So through the mayor, if I may, there's 4 councils of the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority, and it's a requirement that all councils must be in agreement of any changes. That was actually one of the things they were looking to amend in the charter last time, if you recall. It wasn't a majority. So any proposed changes in the charter would need to be circulated and endorsed by all constituent councils for them to take effect.
Any further comments? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now have an item that was put in as an urgent item, 15.1, being the adjustment at 81 Armstrong Road of the camels. And the recommendation is in 2 parts, and I'll do them both together, A and B. Authorises the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate, including fees, and execute an agreement with the owner of A1 Amusements Camel Ride for the use of the land at 81 Armstrong Road, commonly known as the Gillespie land, for the purposes of short-term adjustment of the camels and a site for a caravan throughout the Christmas holiday period, and authorise that further short-term approvals may be granted at the discretion of the Chief Executive Officer. Can I have someone to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller, then Councillor Schofield.
I just wondered whether it would be worth placing an amendment in there to trial it for 1 year, and then come back once we've had that year to see how it's gone, and then give the chamber the opportunity to fully approve it for ongoing purposes.
It has, the recommendation is short-term adjustment through the 24-25 Christmas holiday period. So that will only be for this Christmas holiday period.
That's okay.
Part B said that just at the discretion of the CEO, further short-term approvals may be granted, but I'm sure that will depend on how things are going if in terms of Part A. Yep. Councillor Schofield and then Councillor Quinton.
The request was supported by the horse tram because they're no longer using that land, but it is also to do with the fact of safety and the accident that occurred. And that is one of the concerns, that the woman that was hurt is the one that's still driving the tram, and they're just concerned over the busy holiday period, and they just feel that it's a safety precaution.
I'm sure taking the camels up and down Victor Harbour Road during the busiest time of the year, and especially if she was involved in that terrible accident last year, would be quite.
Just a quick question about Part B. Is the short-term approvals, is that rolling over beyond 24-25 Christmas period, like indefinitely, or is it just for within that period?
Victoria?
Thank you. Through the mayor, it doesn't actually specify, so it's just in terms of any other short-term approvals, I'd say within the next financial year. But we're happy to be more specific for the chamber, just to give you some clarity. And I just wanted to clarify a comment that Councillor Schofield said, that it's not the horse tram don't longer use Gillespie land. They do. They don't use it during the summer. And that's why this isn't a challenge for them, because they do use it during the winter. Just to make sure that the tram does still use it. But happy to specify that changing item B, to authorise short-term approvals may be granted over the next financial year, because that way it just contains it within a year, so that, because I'm assuming what they're looking to do is maybe during the Easter period, other holiday times, they may look to do it if it's a success, and we'd obviously charge appropriately for those shorter terms. We can gauge it for that 12-month period and then come back to the chamber for any further extensions, if that would probably address the concerns.
Is the mover, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Mackenzie, happy with that addition in there if we vary that motion? Thank you. You got that, Chelsea? Captured that. Councillor Schiller, you had a question?
I was just, if it needed to be amended, I would have amended it, but if you can get approval by the mover and seconder, it's okay.
No, we can vary it. Yep, thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Schofield.
The question that I'm about to ask is on behalf of several residents in Victor Harbour in relation to the cruise ships coming in on Wednesday. Just what input has the council have in welcoming those ships coming in, as quite a few individuals have been told to stay out of it? They had no say in anything that was happening, and one person actually contacted the cruise ship and was again told that that was not that person's business. So I'm just wondering, I can't see anything that is actually happening. I know most of the buses that are coming in aren't keeping the people in Victor Harbour, they're transporting them to McLaren Vale and to Goolwa.
Both the CEO and myself have got holds in our diary, which have been in there for a couple of weeks, to go and welcome the cruise ship. We haven't heard anything, and I've actually now got another appointment which has had to take precedence because it's just a hold in the diary. So we're not. I'm not doing anything. I don't know if the CEO gets confirmation to go down and welcome the cruise ship, and because I can't, if there's a confirmation needed, I'll ask the Deputy Mayor if she's available and can act on my behalf, but I haven't got anything concrete. Do you want to speak a bit more?
If I may, through the Mayor. Basically most of the arrangements has been through the South Australian Tourism Commission. So council is really the recipient of their organisation, and we are aware that a lot of the actual cruise ship itself has done all of its pre-bookings for its passengers. I think there's only about 70 passengers on board. It's not a large ship. So we are very new to this. We are at the mercy really of SATC, hence we haven't had the real confirmation around the details of their arrival either. So I would say once we've actually had the ship come in and we've gone through the experience, we can actually then articulate some of the things that we would prefer to see. I haven't had any sort of concerns come to me from other members of the community, but I know through our VIC it's very much they have already made their arrangements. We're really just a stop destination. We would like to have more involvement into the future. So we certainly are sort of gauging how this one continues. There is another ship yet to come in, the Coral Coast or Coral Expeditions is coming in. This first one is a French vessel.
Thank you, Victoria. And it would be a shame if they just get off the ship and go on a bus and head off to McLaren Vale and all around, rather than stopping and looking at what Victor Harbour has to offer, because we certainly have a huge amount to offer. Any other questions without notice? No. There is a motion on notice from Councillor Quaremba regarding Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority replacement of damaged bins. I would like to move to adjourn that till the January meeting. One, because he isn't here to move his motion, and secondly, there were a number of questions that were asked of Fleurieu in relation to bin replacement, and Fleurieu can't provide all of those answers until January, so we won't have the answers anyway. And I was going to ask Councillor Quaremba to adjourn it until then. So if somebody would like to second my adjournment, thank you, Councillor Schofield. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you. So that will come back to the January meeting. Councillor Schofield, I think, seconded it. Did you second that? Yeah. We have another motion on notice, the University City feasibility study by Councillor Quinton. And it was really lovely to see this come through because I think the notion of University City is a great one, especially now that we've got the study hub, and education is something that I think is extremely important. So Michael, would you like to propose your motion?
Thank you. So I assume everyone's had a chance to, I was caught up with most people today and they've had a chance to read through it. So essentially the idea has been brewing away for a few months, and after the success of getting the regional study hub in place, sort of inspired me to move forward with it. So the idea is basically it's a long-term plan, and it's trying to sort of build a different avenue of long-term growth and sustainability for the region. It's obviously, it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of conversations and negotiations to get it happening. But I do believe it will be a really good opportunity to explore it for the region. It's a concept that I don't know how much detail I should go into about because I guess everyone's read it. But I have put a lot of thought into it, and I feel like it's going to create address a lot of the issues that we're facing with investment attraction, business opportunities throughout the whole calendar year, not just the holiday season, demand for part-time and casual employment, bringing a different demographic to the region and vibrancy, and investment. The idea initially would be to look at offering a healthcare related course, a nursing course, setting up a campus offering nursing would be a really good starting point, but obviously looking at the full healthcare spectrum. And then hopefully we'll bring long-term skills and investment into the healthcare facilities that we have down here as well. So yeah, that's basically the gist of it. If anyone has any questions, fire away.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think this is an excellent idea, and I'm very much in support of the concept. And I can see that it does have potential. My only concern would be accommodation, because it will not just be local students, it will bring people students into the area to study too. But I think with sensible forward planning, we can overcome the accommodation for students coming in. But yes, I'm very much in favour of this. Flinders University already has study spaces here at the hospital, and students rotate through there on a regular basis and spend several weeks or months there studying as part of their course, their health courses. So yes, I'm very much behind this.
Thank you. And I know that there's sort of the decentralisation of universities, and there are different campuses. There's allied health campuses in Whyalla, for example, with I think Flinders and University of South Australia. So I think that suits. And, you know, if accommodation is an issue, then sometimes private partnerships with those sorts of things can go well. And I know that down at beyond where they're building the medical hub down there, I think that there's accommodation being built there for short-term student accommodation and medical accommodation. So as you said, Councillor Quinton, this is a long-term vision, but a vision's got to start with something. And I think that that's a fabulous idea. Does anybody else want to speak to this at all? Councillor Mann?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, no, very supportive of this. I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's, as I said, it's a long-term strategic direction. I think, with just looking at the growth in Victor, and I guess how much of that growth is currently targeted at retirement village style accommodation or rather expensive accommodation, I think as a council and a community, we're going to have to invest significantly into our young people and younger generations going forward if we're going to maintain a sustainable town that's a place to live and will support, I guess, the elderly population now and into the future. So I think this is definitely one aspect that ties into a lot of that. And yeah, no, very happy to consider this and look at it. And whether it's that feasibility plan or things that are broken down into in that budget deliberations and direction. But I think it's a great direction to go.
Thank you. And it's something that RDA may be able to assist with as well, as they did with the study hub. Councillor Schofield.
Yes, I think this is a fantastic idea. I also believe that there's a possibility of business partnerships for accommodation. I do know that the hospital has some houses that they rent on a permanent basis for doctors and some of the nurses as well. But we do have motels that aren't completely full. And so there could be a partnership in some of those that give them occupancy 12 months of the year.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, like Carlos has said, definitely in support of this motion. I think it is an important thing to have in Victor Harbour. Makes our city the regional hub of the Fleurieu and of our area. So I think there will be many positive things coming out of this, and especially attracting the young families down here who are going to study and then can go into a job and really work and live in our region. So I'm definitely in support.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Lucky last. Yep, supportive as well. Just know that we will need to bear in mind if we're looking at a profile of trying to get young professionals, particularly down here, to look at every aspect of their life, looking at what they want in a town, and that's going to be reflective of some of our other decisions. Looking at housing, looking at entertainment, recreation, all of those things will play a part in trying to attract that demographic of people here. So that still needs to come into the planning, as well as just the basic idea of a university hub or equivalent. So I'll be in support as well.
Thank you very much. I think everyone's spoken on this, and so I'll put it to the floor. If you can formally show your support or otherwise, those in support of this motion, those against, so that's unanimous support. Thank you. Are there any motions without notice? No. We now move into confidential items, and the